Good morning, and welcome to the September meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, you please walk us through what to expect today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, and good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
First, you will consider a report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking that would leverage advancements in technology to improve wireless emergency alert content, delivery, and testing, while seeking comment on further measures to ensure effective alerts. Second, you will consider a report and order that extends to broadcast licensees the same streamlined rules and procedures that common carrier wireless licensees use to seek approval for foreign ownership, with appropriate broadcast-specific modifications. The item also establishes a framework for publicly traded common carrier or broadcast licensee or controlling U.S. parent to ascertain its foreign ownership levels. Third, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that proposes steps that the Commission can take to promote the distribution of independent and diverse programming to consumers. Please note item 4 has been deleted from today's agenda. Regarding the items listed under consent agenda in the Commission's September 2016 Sunshine Notice, items 1 through 4 have been removed from the consent agenda and remain under consideration by the Commission. Items 6 and 7 have been deleted from the consent agenda and were adopted by the Commission. The Commission has before it today consent agenda item number 5. Last, you will consider 6 personnel actions consisting of the items listed under personnel actions. This is your agenda for today. The first item will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. It is entitled Improving Wireless Emergency Alerts, Amendments to Part 11 of the Commission's Rules Regarding the Emergency Alert System, and Rear Admiral David Simpson, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Admiral Simpson.
Good morning, Chairman Wheeler and Commissioners.
Good morning.
Today, we present a report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking that will improve wireless emergency alerts. Since its launch in 2012, more than 21,000 wireless emergency alerts have been sent to warn Americans from weather events, missing children, active shooters, and bombing suspects, to many other emergency situations. The service is a proven, valuable tool for keeping communities safe. It makes a difference. Now, we have the opportunity to leverage technological advancements and lessons learned to make the service an even more effective public safety tool. In recent events in New York City, the value of high-quality alerts was illustrated. On September 19th, in the wake of a bombing in the Chelsea neighborhood, emergency managers used WIA to alert the community. New York City leaders have since indicated that the inclusion of a photo with such an alert would be an even more effective tool. WIA also played a critical role during natural disasters, as was the case very recently in Baton Rouge, where emergency managers used the service to warn of predicted severe flooding. This event also, though, illustrates the shortfalls in the existing service, as some residents not in the traditional floodplain assumed the broad area flooding alert was meant for those along the river and did not plan for their subsequent evacuation. Alerts that are more geographically targeted are more likely to grab the public's attention and motivate them to take appropriate protective action. The changes proposed in the item before you would further improve the utility of WIA for community and state emergency managers and enable alert originators to more confidently use the tool. It would enable links to additional information like a map with hurricane evacuation routes, aid distribution points, or phone number shortcuts. It will expand available message content through increased character limits. The geo-targeting improvements in the item will lead to best practice alert use, ensuring that warnings are sent wherever possible, whenever possible, to the intended audience with time-sensitive information relevant to their current situation. Lastly, it would support Amber Alerts intended to motivate the public to assist law enforcement in the search for a missing child, to include links to pictures of the child or the suspected abductor. Taken together, the changes would make WIA a more powerful life-saving tool and will improve engagement by emergency managers with the communities they serve. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau are Nicole McGinnis, Associate Bureau Chief for Cybersecurity, Gregory Cook, and James Wiley from our Policy and Licensing Division. I would like to thank Lisa Folks and the bureaus and offices who contributed to this item. We also appreciate the continued engagement by public safety and industry stakeholders, including the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, as well as our sister agencies, FEMA and NOAA. James will present the item.
Thank you, Admiral Simpson. Good morning, Chairman Wheeler and Commissioners.
Good morning.
As Admiral Simpson explained, this item, if adopted, would leverage technological advances to enhance WIA as a tool for state and local officials to keep communities safe. The order adopts requirements to improve WIA message content, delivery, training, and outreach. With respect to message content, we would increase the maximum message length from 90 to 360 characters for 4G, LTE, and future networks. We would significantly improve the quality of information that alert originators are able to transmit by requiring participating wireless carriers to support embedded URLs and phone numbers in all WIA messages, including Amber Alerts, within 1 year of the rule's publication in the Federal Register. This would enable the public to view a photo or to place a call to authorities by simply clicking on a link in a WIA alert. We would create a new alert classification for public safety messages, defined as essential public safety advisories that prescribe one or more actions likely to save lives or safeguard property. We would also require carriers to support transmission of alerts initiated in Spanish. The order would also adopt rules to meet alert originators' needs for the delivery of alerts. Specifically, we would require participating wireless carriers to create and maintain alert logs that they must make available upon request. We would require carriers to improve alert delivery by geographically targeting alerts to an area that best approximates the target area specified by alert originators, and allow carriers to begin implementing device-based geotargeting as soon as practicable to create a clear path forward for meeting an even more accurate geotargeting standard. The order would also adopt rules that create a framework for emergency managers to test, exercise, and raise public awareness about WIA to support community proficiency in the use of wireless alerts. Next, in the further notice, we would propose and seek comment on additional measures to improve the effectiveness of WIA. We would propose to require that WIA-capable devices preserve alerts for easy user review until they expire. We would propose requiring carriers to deliver earthquake-related alerts to the public in fewer than 3 seconds. We would also seek comment on additional steps we can take to optimize WIA as a means of communicating with the public during disaster relief efforts, including by using WIA to cue the provision of crowdsourced community feedback. We would also seek to incorporate future technical advancements to improve WIA. Specifically, we would propose to require support for certain multimedia content in public safety messages, and propose to require carriers to geotarget alerts to areas that match, rather than approximate target areas specified by alert originators. We would also seek comment on ways to deepen WIA's support for alerts in multiple languages, and on whether and how 5G networks could enhance WIA even further. Finally, we would take steps to promote the development of consumer education tools for WIA, and would propose to facilitate and inform state and local emergency management agencies' use of WIA by requiring carriers to annually report on critical performance metrics. The Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, and to all of you for all the work that has gone into this. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is in our darkest hours that we, unfortunately, are most reminded of the importance of robust, reliable connectivity. In the wake of the recent bombing in Manhattan, as you heard, the wireless emergency alert system enlisted millions of New Yorkers to be the eyes and ears of law enforcement. Thanks in large part to this valuable tool, the suspect was swiftly captured. This first-of-its-kind message is a poignant example of the innovative ways WIA can be utilized to help save lives. Today's item enhances WIA's effectiveness and utility by adopting rules to improve message content, delivery, and testing. Notably, we increased the maximum alert message length from 90 to 360 characters for 4G LTE and future networks to enable alert originators to more clearly communicate with their communities. We also require participating mobile providers to support embedded references in all alerts as contemplated in the other underlying NPRM. Indeed, as a recent incidents in New York and New Jersey underscore, providing emergency managers with the ability to direct their communities to a comprehensive and authoritative resource in an emergency situation is a must. Equally important is ensuring that alerts are delivered to the intended audience. To support this goal, we require participating wireless providers to narrow their geo-targeting of alert messages to locations that best approximate the areas specified by an alert originator, and we affirm our commitment to ensuring that alert messages are only received by those for whom they are relevant. The further notice tees up a series of questions and technical considerations that must be resolved before we get there, but we are unwavering in our goals to reduce over-alerting and improve WIA's effectiveness in this regard. In addition, the further notice seeks comment on a number of important issues, such as expanding the language capabilities of WIA beyond English and Spanish, providing the public more choice in the types of alerts received, as well as the manner and timing of the alerts, and ensuring that enhanced WIA capabilities are considered and factored into the 5G development process. The importance of this life-saving tool cannot be overstated, and I encourage all stakeholders to continue to participate in the ongoing dialogue as technological improvements are made to mobile networks. We have a lot to be proud of today, but more work remains, and time is of the essence. How appropriate it is, Mr. Chairman, that we are releasing this item during National Preparedness Month. It gives us another opportunity to thank the nation's emergency professionals for all they do to keep us safe, including those who came to the rescue during yesterday's tragic shooting incident at Townville Elementary in my home state of South Carolina. I would also like to thank Admiral David Simpson for his leadership and the staff of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau for their dedication and tireless efforts on behalf of the American people.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Thank you. As you just heard my colleagues say, September is National Preparedness Month. It was also in September, more years ago than I care to count, that I moved into an apartment in New York. It was small and unlovely. It was also within easy walking distance of the neighborhood where a bomb exploded earlier this month. What I learned from my time in New York is that its residents may shuffle down the sidewalks in an anonymous blur, but when crisis ensues, they rally. They love their city. So on September 19th, when mobile phones blared with the piercing sound of a wireless emergency alert, urging them to look for a bombing suspect, they took note. He was located a few hours later, and last week he was charged by federal and state prosecutors. The question now is how we can make alerts like this better. That's not just a question for New York. It's a question for all of us. Our wireless devices are in our palms, our pockets, our purses. They are with us always. So let's recognize them for what they are, a formidable tool for public safety. Congress saw this very clearly when it created the Wireless Alert and Response Network Act 10 years ago. But the engineering and approach behind this emergency alert system is dated. And though its power has been demonstrated in New York and elsewhere, so have its limitations. We tackle some of those limitations today. We update and modernize key elements of the wireless emergency alert system. In particular, we increase the length of alerts from 90 to 360 characters. This will allow them to include embedded references, including telephone numbers. In addition, we better target the geographic delivery of messages. We also expand testing opportunities for state and local public safety authorities. But by no means should we stop here, because the episode near my old neighborhood did more than burn and damage buildings. It demonstrated that going forward, we can do more with these messages. Vague directives in text about where to find more information about a suspect, just as we saw in New York, are not good enough. As we move into the 5G future, we need to ensure that multimedia is available in all of our alert messages. Because as a New Yorker, Senator Schumer has said, when it comes to a terrorist or other very dangerous criminal on the run, a picture is not only worth 1,000 words, it could save 1,000 lives if the right person sees it. Amen. Let's make this happen.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I discuss this item, I haven't had a chance to make a statement about some news today that the public and folks in this room most likely just learned about. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to say, Happy National Coffee Day. As you can see, I'm observing the occasion by the leader, and I hope you will too. Okay. The Wireless Emergency Alert, or WEA system, has a similar simple purpose, to send public safety information to Americans on their mobile devices during emergencies. WEA's implementation has been a little more complicated. Last year, I noted the importance of allowing public safety officials to target wireless alerts to more specific geographic locations. And that's because of a phenomenon sometimes referred to as over-alerting. And this happens, and has happened to me, when you get an alert that has no real connection to your location. Instead, the alert is about a storm or some other event at a nearby neighborhood or even a distant community. Now, receiving an irrelevant message isn't just an annoyance. It undermines the effectiveness of the entire WEA system by causing people to tune out all alerts. This has serious public safety consequences, as we have seen over the past weeks and months. For example, as Louisiana was drenched by catastrophic floods this August, officials used WEA to send out at least six flash flood alerts. But, as our Communications Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council, or CISRIC, found, the alerts went unheeded by tens of thousands of people. Residents ignored the messages because they had previously received flood alerts that only applied to homes within a traditional flood zone. And according to CISRIC, this time around, people assumed that the alert was not for them, since their home had never flooded before. In the end, over 30,000 people had to be rescued. The need for enhanced geotargeting was brought home again less than 2 weeks ago during the bombings in New York and New Jersey, mentioned by my colleagues previously. Public safety officials activated the WEA system 3 times in response to the bombing in Manhattan on September 17th. When they found a suspicious package in the Chelsea neighborhood, they attempted to send targeted alerts to residents in the immediate vicinity, directing them to stay away from their windows. But those messages were broadcast far beyond that neighborhood. To ensure that that kind of overshoot doesn't happen in the future, New York City's public safety officials have urged the FCC to adopt a device-assisted geofencing approach. And this approach would help ensure that EAS messages are delivered only to areas where they are relevant. But the problem with over-alerting isn't limited to cases where too many people are receiving messages. The opposite is also true. Citizens and public safety officials alike are opting out of the system altogether. For instance, the city of Seattle says that it, quote, doesn't use WEA because of over-alerting. The city of Houston says that it has shied away from using WEA because of the high likelihood of over-alerting. Harris County, Texas, reports that it chose not to use WEA during 4 recent disasters solely due to significant concerns over the granularity of alerts. Millions of people who live in these communities could miss out on potentially life-saving information because WEA's current brushstroke is too broad. And that's why the public safety community has said that enabling more precise alerting is the single most important action the FCC can take to make WEA relevant for first responders. Now, after studying the record and speaking with public safety officials, including those in New York City, I agreed that we need to do more than simply codify the status quo. And so I proposed to my colleagues that we be more forward-leaning, that we commit in this order to moving ahead with a device-based approach to geotargeting. By enabling devices to screen emergency messages and only allow the relevant ones through, this approach would allow public safety officials to target information to specific geographic areas. And it would advance WIA as a platform by reducing alert fatigue. I'm happy to report that this order incorporates this approach in addition to adopting other enhancements to our geo-targeting rules. And moreover, the further notice now seeks additional comment on ways we can implement our commitment to device-assisted geo-targeting. Now, taking a step back, these are major steps toward promoting a public safety solution as advanced as wireless services themselves. And so, because today's order moves us in the right direction, it has my support. Thanks to the staff of the Public Safety Bureau and others in the Commission for their hard work on this item, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wireless alerts are one of the many tools that provide Americans with information during emergencies. From tornadoes to Amber Alerts to terrorist attacks, these alerts can provide beneficial warnings that there is danger ahead or to be on the lookout for a missing child. For this reason, I can generally support such ideas as 360 character alerts, a new category of public safety messages, and narrower geographic targeting as a means to improve the wireless emergency alert system. And I appreciate that the number of my edits, including the elimination of the legacy timeline on 360 character alerts by date certain, and a reduction in the message log retention mandates were incorporated in the text. At the same time, as we make changes to the functionality of WIA, it is necessary to encourage participation by weighing the burdens placed on industry and recipients by ensuring that the system is reliable so that consumers receive necessary information but not annoyed by over-alerting. I believe that portions of this item fail to strike such a balance, and this is where my ideas and views differ from my colleagues. First, I cannot support requiring participating wireless providers to add functions that are not based on what can reasonably be achieved with existing technology and realistic timelines. Today's order requires certain components to be completed within 30 months and others a year. While people undoubtedly say these timelines are sufficient, these solutions will need to go through standards process, device and network development, testing, and be deployed in the marketplace. That's not likely to happen within these tight timelines. We've seen this approach on multiple occasions in the public safety context, such as location accuracy, where the political pressures and headlines take precedent over technological feasibility. Big announcements lead to big expectations, which eventually result in multiple waivers because the technology lags behind the hype. Overpromising and underdelivering does not improve public safety. We also need to consider that standards bodies have their hands full right now preparing for next-generation technologies. I certainly wouldn't want to see 5G deployments stuck on the sidelines in order to incorporate not ready WIA solutions into the development of 5G networks and devices. That is exactly what is being contemplated by provisions in this further notice. This trend also permeates the further notice where we propose earthquake alert prioritization and delivery within 3 minutes, which the system is not currently designed to do and which may not be feasible. We also seek comment on multilingual alerting beyond English and Spanish, which would also require standards and new character sets. To top it off, the item even acknowledges that many emergency management agencies do not have the capability to send such messages. Second, we seem completely oblivious to the potential unintended consequences of unproven technologies. The requirement to include embedded references such as URLs and phone numbers in WIA alerts is a beware for what you wish for situation. While the availability of these links may seem useful, affected individuals may not be able to use them because encouraging internet use and phone calls at those exact moments could lead to additional network congestion at a time of already beyond capacity during an emergency. This is directly contrary to the comments from network operators and technical experts such as Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Standards in the record. Further, the pilot program that is initiated in this item is more than troubled. Take, for example, the fact that the period for such a trial will conclude and the requirements will go into effect before the standards are likely finalized. How does that allow us to determine if network congestion is an issue? Instead of getting answers, we are ignoring the warnings of network operators and experts in network congestion. This item doubles down on this idea by committing to incorporate multimedia such as photo, images, and maps into public safety message WIA alerts. This issue will be considered in the further notice, but through thorough consideration will need to be given, along with real testing beyond the voluntary prototyping envisioned in the order, to the network effects of such messages before we force providers to accommodate additional data-intensive messaging. Third, we must ensure that WIA is only used when appropriate. Otherwise, there is increased risk that consumers will opt out of these alerts. My colleagues have claimed that the bombing in New York is illustrative of how WIA system works and can be improved. But after the alert was issued, to be on the lookout for the suspect, there were articles and social media posts about how frightened and annoyed some recipients were. Now, if some people found the screeching tone of countless cell phones alerts going off in subways off-putting in that context, imagine if the message received was a public service announcement informing you of the benefits of WIA. On that point, I strongly oppose the use of emergency alert systems or signals for the purposes of PSAs. Lastly, the further notice adds a host of questionable ideas, such as requiring a uniform format for alert logging, standardized opt-out menus for consumers, and extensive data collection and annual reporting requirements, which will add unnecessary costs for wireless providers with little benefit to consumers. Additionally, the unnecessary point-of-sale disclosures are burdensome and could mislead consumers because your WIA experience can change depending on your geographic area, what network you are on, and whether there is congestion. While I approve a good portion of this item, I must dissent in those parts for those reasons. Thank you.
You know, we began this proceeding last November for a simple reason. And that is that when technology gives us the opportunity to save lives, to increase public safety, shame on us if we don't seize on that opportunity. As my colleagues have said, we know of the importance of wireless emergency alerts from the headlines, whether they be in the bayous of Louisiana or the canyons of New York. And in those experiences, we've learned how the alerts can be made better, from including links to further information, including photos, to more precise geographic targeting, to expanding the length of the message and the languages in which it is offered. A couple of weeks ago, I guess it was less than a couple of weeks ago, it was probably last week, NYPD Chief James O'Neill wrote us a letter in which he talked about the importance of these alerts and said, quote, "Lives are truly on the line. We all know how mobile technology has changed our lives generally. With this action today, we're now doing even more to allow mobile technology to save lives. So I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The item is adopted. The request for editorial privileges is granted with the objection noted. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the next item on your agenda today will be presented by the International Bureau and the Media Bureau and is entitled Review of Foreign Ownership Policies for Broadcast, Common Carrier, and Aeronautical Radio Licensees under Section 310B4. The Bureau will give the introduction.
Good morning, everybody. Mindel, whenever you're ready.
Admiral Simpson's taller than me. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. The report and order before you today would extend to broadcast licensees the same streamlined foreign ownership approval process the Commission applies now to common carrier wireless licensees with appropriate broadcast-specific modifications. This standardized approval process under Section 310b4 of the Communications Act will provide the broadcast sector with a clearer path for investment. In addition, this report and order would reform the methodology that a publicly traded broadcast or common carrier licensee uses to ascertain its foreign ownership levels. This new methodology would eliminate the need for surveys or random samples of shareholders, which are impractical for public companies in today's marketplace. The Media Bureau and the International Bureau collaborated on this item with invaluable assistance from the Office of General Counsel and the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. The International Bureau has worked closely with the Media Bureau on foreign ownership issues for nearly 2 decades, and they join us at the table today. To my right is Bill Lake, Chief of the Media Bureau, along with Ben Arden and Christine Gepp. And to my left are the iconic Susan O'Connell, Kim Cook, and Gabrielle Kim from the International Bureau. In addition, I'd like to recognize from the Media Bureau David Roberts, Lisa Scanlon, and Jamila Bess Johnson. And sitting behind me, we have our team from, we have Deputy Chief of the Bureau Troy Tanner, Kate Collins, Denise Coca, and Francis Gutierrez. I'd also like to thank Bill Richardson from the Office of General Counsel, Linda Ray, and Kathy Harris of WTB. And a final note of thanks to Diane Cornell, who championed this item when she was in the chairman's office. And now Holly Sauer has started reviewing. She started reviewing this item when she was in the Media Bureau, and now she has it as her first International Bureau item in front of it from the chairman's office. Gabrielle will present this item. She's one of our star honors attorneys, and this is her first commission presentation. Gabrielle.
Thank you, Mindel. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As noted, the report and order before you extends streamlined foreign ownership rules and procedures to broadcast licensees. It also reforms the methodology that publicly traded broadcast and common carrier licensees and controlling U.S. parent companies use to ascertain compliance with the foreign ownership limits of the Communications Act. The item discusses the procedures for the filing and review of broadcast petitions for declaratory ruling under Section 310b. The item allows a broadcast licensee to request approval for up to and including 100% aggregate foreign ownership of its controlling U.S. parent. A broadcast licensee may also request approval for a proposed controlling foreign investor to increase its equity and or voting interest in the U.S. parent up to and including 100% at some future time, and for a foreign investor to increase its ownership interest in the U.S. parent up to and including a non-controlling 49.99% interest at some future time without requiring a new ruling. Broadcast licensees, including any covered affiliates or subsidiaries that have foreign ownership rulings, may apply those rulings to after-acquired broadcast licenses, regardless of the broadcast service or the geographic area served by the stations. Broadcast licensees would need specific approval only for foreign individuals or entities with a greater than 5% ownership interest, or, in some cases, an interest greater than 10% in the licensee's U.S. parent. The item recognizes that in some instances it is appropriate to apply existing broadcast requirements to minimize disruption to broadcasters. For example, broadcasters would use the broadcast attribution criteria to determine those U.S. and foreign interests that must be disclosed, and would use the broadcast insulation criteria to determine whether a particular foreign investor requires specific approval. Next, the item reforms the methodology a publicly traded broadcast or common carrier licensee or controlling U.S. parent uses to ascertain its compliance with the 20% foreign ownership limit under Section 310b3 and the 25% foreign ownership benchmark under Section 310b4. The new methodology relies on information that is known or reasonably should be known to the company in the ordinary course of business. The methodology requires public companies to exercise due diligence in identifying and determining the citizenship of their known or reasonably should be known interest holders. It specifies the information public companies can rely on for purposes of complying with Section 310b. Significantly, it eliminates the need to conduct surveys or random samplings of U.S. public company shares, or apply presumptions about the citizenship of unknown shareholders. It also provides licensees with greater certainty and reduces burdens in determining aggregate levels of foreign ownership. And it allows such companies to focus their efforts and resources on identifying and determining the citizenship of those shareholders that may present a realistic potential to influence or control the company, rather than on smaller unknown shareholders that lack such potential. The International Bureau and Media Bureau recommend adoption of this item and request editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, and nice job. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. As an owner of a small weekly outlet, a former owner, I don't want to get the rumors to get out. There are a lot of rumors floating around here today, so let me put that. I know all too well the importance of adequate capital to enable operations, support new and innovative service offerings, and provide value to customers. Today's order recognizes these benefits by extending in large part to the broadcast industry the streamlined rules and modified procedures the Commission adopted 3 years ago for foreign ownership reviews of common carrier licenses. We address head-on the complexities and difficulties faced by publicly traded broadcast companies when attempting to ascertain the extent of foreign ownership. And we provide more efficient approaches, offer greater transparency and predictability, and enhance access to capital opportunities for broadcasters while reducing regulatory burdens and costs. The leadership and staff of the International Bureau and Media Bureau are to be commended because this order is a praiseworthy example of how the Commission unleashes opportunities by harmonizing and streamlining rules to facilitate capital investment as we protect important policy goals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great job, Gabrielle. And I look forward to the vote.
And thank you. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Broadcasting has a storied history. For decades, it has been where we turn for local news and entertainment in communities all across the country. But change is in the air. Spectrum used by broadcast stations is now in demand by other services. A new broadcast standard is in the works, and new media platforms are multiplying. To ensure the future of broadcasting is bright, investment is key. But the laws that govern broadcast investment can get in the way. That's because they have a distinctly vintage quality. In fact, by and large, they were put in place to prevent foreign powers from disrupting ship-to-shore communications during warfare. But just as horses and bayonets are not the tools of modern warfare, the cyber threats we face today are not especially well guarded by these prohibitions. Moreover, these policies can create artificial constraints that make it tough for broadcasters to access funding on a global scale. This is not right, and it's not fair. So today, we update our policies by extending to broadcast licensees the same streamlined rules and procedures applicable to common carrier licensees under the law. We clarify our rules on foreign investment across the board. And we also improve our method for counting foreign ownership in both common carriers and broadcasters. These actions remove barriers for investment and provide clarity for broadcasters seeking support for new technologies and new ways to reach the communities they serve. This effort has my full support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pai.
4 years ago, I called for the FCC to relax its restrictions on foreign investment in the broadcast industry. At the time, I said that this could give broadcasters greater access to capital. And I noted that the Commission's rules with respect to foreign investment didn't make sense in today's marketplace. For example, our approach allowed a foreign company to own a majority interest in one of our nation's nationwide wireless carriers. But it did not allow that same company to own a single AM radio station in Kansas. In 2013, the Commission took action. We ended our de facto ban on any foreign investment in U.S. broadcast holding companies exceeding 25%. That was a step in the right direction, and I was pleased to support it. But I also noted that we still had to develop additional procedures for applicants seeking to take advantage of the Commission's policy change. Well, in this order, the Commission does just that. We decide to streamline the procedures that apply to a foreign investment in broadcasters, and these same streamlined procedures have worked well in the common carrier context. So I'm confident they'll work as well in the broadcast context. They'll make it easier for broadcasters to access capital, while at the same time ensuring that any foreign ownership above the 25% benchmark set forth in Section 310 does not compromise our national security or any other public interest. They'll also promote regulatory parity and ensure that different sectors of the communications industry can compete for investment on a level playing field. We also modernize, in this order, the Commission's methodology for assessing compliance with the foreign ownership limits set forth in Section 310. Our prior approach, which broadly focused on all shareholders, may have made sense given the way the stock market operated decades ago. But today, about 85% of the shares held by an institution are held by an institution or individual on behalf of someone else. So this makes it very difficult for companies to figure out the identity, let alone the citizenship, of many of their shareholders. And that was a particular problem, given the Commission's presumption that any unknown shareholders are not U.S. citizens. Thankfully, the Commission ends that presumption today. And our new methodology focuses only on ownership information that is known or reasonably should be known to a public company. And this reform makes sense because these are the ownership interests that could actually influence a company's operations. And furthermore, this reform will eliminate the need for companies to conduct costly and often unreliable surveys of individual shareholders. I'm therefore optimistic that this order will reduce the regulatory burdens placed on public companies and make it easier for them to comply with our rules. At the end of the day, the Commission's rules in this area need to strike a balance. On one hand, we should promote investment in the United States and make it easier for communication companies to access capital. But on the other, we must ensure that any specific foreign investment in this sector of our economy is in the public interest. Because this order generally strikes the right balance, I'm pleased to support it. I'd like to thank the staff of the International Bureau and the Media Bureau for their hard work in this proceeding, particularly Gabrielle Kim for the presentation, and my old law school classmate Kim Cook for her hard work. And I salute Commissioner O'Reilly for his advocacy of a more modernized regulatory framework in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've often spoken of the need to promote foreign investment opportunities for broadcasters and to further streamline foreign ownership reviews under Section 310B of the Communications Act. Quite simply, today's order is a helpful step, as the changes are likely to produce significant benefits without jeopardizing national security. By allowing broadcasters to follow the streamlined process available to common carrier licensees, we facilitate new avenues of capital that will help stations compete in today's highly competitive video marketplace. We also modify the methodology that broadcasters and common carriers use to assess compliance with the statute. The old method of determining foreign ownership levels was practically impossible and certainly not cost-effective to implement for publicly traded companies in today's fast-paced global markets. Further, by focusing primarily on those shareholders with more than 5% interests, which are reported in certain SEC filings, the burden on licensees will be greatly reduced, while retaining the ability to review companies with significant foreign ownership held by entities that are more likely to be able to exert influence over a company. There are some things, however, that I would like to have done differently. For instance, I had hoped that the item would raise the overall reporting threshold. Raising this level, which triggers the time-consuming review process, would reduce costs on industry participants, align the U.S. with nations that permit higher levels of foreign investment, and reduce the efforts of other countries to restrict U.S. investment based on our own ownership restrictions. While we do not do this today, I am very pleased that the item states that we may pursue such measures in the future. In that regard, the Commission must finish its proceeding on Team Telecom to truly streamline its foreign ownership review. We can take all the steps we want, but if Team Telecom can hold up applications for years in a regulatory abyss, all of the improvements that we do today are of little value. Failing to identify the concerns, hiding behind opaque structures, and delaying or refusing to conclude a review has been problematic. That docket is nearly universally filled with filings indicating that drastic improvements to Team Telecom are needed, and it needs to be resolved in the very near term. So I want to thank the chairman for incorporating my edits, and I can't thank enough the teams by Mindel and Bill for all of their work on this important item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I liked that. I can't thank enough. I think that's a true and well-put statement to the Media Bureau and the International Bureau and all of you who have worked so hard on this. I have a statement for the record. I won't read it into the record here, but I do want to say thank you to all of you and to Commissioner O'Reilly for his leadership on this issue. So we will go to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The request for editorial privileges are granted with the objection noted. Thank you to all of you.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the third item on your agenda today will be presented by the Media Bureau and is entitled Promoting the Availability of Diverse and Independent Sources of Video Programming. And Bill Lake, Chief of the Media Bureau, will give the introduction.
Didn't even have to move, you know? Just sit there and the whole world comes to you, you know?
I do have different reinforcements this time.
This is okay. All right, the floor is yours.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners. The Media Bureau presents a notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks to foster consumer choice and access to diverse programming in television. The video marketplace has experienced tremendous innovation in recent years that is transforming the ways that consumers access and watch programming. At the same time, however, independent programmers continue to face challenges in gaining carriage for their content, which in turn limits consumer choice. The rulemaking we initiate today seeks to address these barriers by proposing to ban certain practices that could impede competition, diversity, and innovation in the video marketplace. Joining me at the table are Martha Heller, Steve Brockhart, Raylan Remy, and Kalisha Myers of the Media Bureau's Policy Division. Kalisha will present the item.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. We are pleased to present this notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks to address certain practices in the video programming industry that may hamper the growth of independent programming and emerging video distribution platforms. The NPRM proposes to prohibit the use of unconditional, most favored nation, and unreasonable alternative distribution method provisions in carriage agreements between pay TV providers and independent video programmers. Unconditional, most favored nation provisions allow MVPDs to obtain better contract terms that a programmer has offered to another distributor without their having to assume reciprocal obligations. Unreasonable alternative distribution method provisions unduly restrict or prevent independent programmers from entering into carriage agreements with online video distributors. By reducing the ability of independent programmers to experiment with special carriage terms and to license their content on new or emerging platforms, these contract clauses stifle the availability of diverse programming, new entry into the distribution marketplace, and the development of innovative services. The NPRM also seeks comment on our authority to adopt these rules under Section 616A of the Communications Act, which directs the Commission to establish regulations governing program carriage agreements and related practices between MVPDs and video programming vendors. In addition, we seek additional input on bundling practices, including how bundling impacts consumer costs, choice, and access to diverse programming. Finally, we seek comment on other rules we should consider in this proceeding as a means to foster independent programming. The proposed rules would serve Section 616 and the public interest by giving consumers more choice in the sources and variety of their video programming, and greater flexibility in the means and manner of accessing programming content. The Media Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt this notice of proposed rulemaking and request editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalisha. You know, it's appropriate that you're the first commenter here since you've been leading the charge on this. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've been dropped. I wasn't speaking to you this time. But these are three of the most paralyzing words a small or independent programmer could ever hear. They render a content provider powerless and frustrated. And as for the consumer, with little or no warning, they suddenly discover that a favorite network or show has been removed from their channel lineup, leaving them with little or no alternative means for accessing niche content. But what some may call niche programming is that customers' preferred viewing. Strong ratings, rave reviews, neither of these seem to matter. Their favorite station is now missing from the programming lineup because the cruel reality is that independent programmers live by a different set of rules. Some understandable, others quite perplexing. Just last month, as part of my office's Connecting Communities tour, I visited one such programmer in a small town called Indian Land, South Carolina, which is an unincorporated community just south of Charlotte. There I toured the facilities and met with the leadership of INSP, a family-focused content provider that reaches more than 80 million U.S. households. Inspiration Network, like countless other independent programmers I have heard from, faces a number of significant challenges that make it difficult to compete on a level playing field, though they will be the first to admit that, comparatively speaking, they are quite fortunate. But it's because INSP and dozens of others who are not as fortunate that I urged 7 months ago for the adoption of a notice of inquiry that enabled the Commission to embark on a fact-finding mission on the current state of programming diversity, consumer choice, and the evolving video marketplace. And just what did we learn from this exercise? After combing through more than 36,000 filings and reviewing the transcripts of 2 public workshops, several themes emerged. Most notably, independent programmers from all ends of the ideological spectrum told us that they regularly must accept clauses in their program carriage agreements, including most favored nation and alternative distribution methods provisions, that inhibit their ability to grow and innovate. Now, I must admit that when we launched the NOI in February, I was unsure of what path, if any, we would tread. I knew that there were significant problems facing independent programmers, but I was always aware that tackling these issues head-on would require a robust docket and clear legal authority. Building on the extensive record and the authority granted under Section 616 of the Communications Act, the NPRM we consider today appropriately targets 2 troubling practices: unconditional MFNs and unreasonable ADMs. For those outside of the communications law space, imagine that as an independent programmer eager to grow subscribership, you strike a carriage deal in which you agree to accept a lower rate per subscriber in exchange for, say, better channel placement. Now, in negotiating with another distributor, you are told that because of your previous deal with the other entity, that they will not take your discounted, that they will not only take your discounted rate, but put your channel in a tier with just a quarter of the subscribers you thought you were negotiating for. Now, just how fair does that sound? Similarly, what if you were told that to strike a carriage deal with a traditional pay TV provider, you must agree to a clause that will forever prevent you from striking similar agreements in the future with online video distributors, or what we call OVDs. These very real situations are what independent programmers face each and every day. But do not take my word here when it comes to the nature of these practices. Look at what the Department of Justice said in its review of the Charter-Time Warner cable deal earlier this year. DOJ stated that ADMs and other contractual provisions have the effect of making OVDs less competitive. As a result of this determination, the Department of Justice imposed conditions on New Charter that prohibit the company from entering into or enforcing ADMs with programmers as well as MFNs if they are inconsistent with this underlying prohibition. I am also pleased that this NPRM asks about potential recourse when customers find that their favorite programming network has been dropped from the channel lineup. For many consumers who are locked into a multi-year contract, the prospect of finding another paid TV provider that carries their favorite channel, if one even exists, means paying stiff cancellation penalties. The NPRM, at my urging, also asks a series of questions about other practices such as bundling that may prevent independent programmers from gaining carriage. For new entrants, some who are even willing to initially offer free carriage, this can be challenging. It can be also challenging to get your telephone call returned. In sum, I respectfully ask this body, are we satisfied with a few large conglomerates dominating the pay TV channel lineup? Do we believe that independent and diverse voices have a place in a vibrant media landscape? Do these voices play a role in a strong democracy? The adoption of the day's NPRM ensures that these questions and more are addressed, and for that I sincerely thank the chairman for his support of this fact-finding exercise, the Media Bureau staff, including Michelle Carey, Martha Heller, Raylene Remy, and Kalisha Myers, for diving into the complex issues surrounding carriage agreements and producing this NPRM. And of course, I must thank my advisor, David Grossman, for his keen attention to detail. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think we will probably shortly find the answers to those questions you posed. Mr. Rosenworcel.
So much content, so many ways to watch, so few hours in the day. This is what viewing now feels like for me, and probably a lot of other people too. We have a dizzying array of channels. We have programming available anytime, anywhere, and on any screen. New platforms are multiplying at a rapid clip. Keeping up with a show, a season, a meme, a hashtag, it's exhausting. And while all kinds of content is now available to exhaust and excite us, for those who create it, breaking through and being seen is hard. Cutting through the crowd often requires securing space on the channel lineup of cable and satellite systems. Although there are new ways to watch, these platforms still dominate viewing. As a result, they remain an important part of building an audience, and building an audience, in turn, is essential for new investment, which provides the opportunity to create more new and diverse content. Today's notice of proposed rulemaking takes a hard look at this situation. It asks about carriage agreements programmers sign to get on cable and satellite systems. In particular, it seeks comment on the operation of certain clauses in those agreements, known as unconditional most favored nation provisions and alternative distribution method provisions. In practice, these clauses can make it tough for new and independent programming to get on the channel lineup of satellite and cable systems, and it can make it tough for them to even show their programming online. So we ask about our authority to address these difficulties and seek ideas for ways to give new and diverse programming a fair shot at being seen. I look forward to the record that develops and thank my colleague, Commissioner Clyburn, for encouraging us to get this dialogue going.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pai.
As an FCC commissioner and as a citizen, I believe that our media should ideally reflect the diversity of the country in which we live. And when it comes to the video marketplace, we've made a lot of progress over the last decade. There are now more outlets through which creators of video content can distribute their programming than ever before. Over-the-top video, in particular, has been a game changer. It's given diverse voices a new way to be heard, and it's given Americans access to novel content they might not previously have seen. In my statement on the notice of inquiry in this proceeding, for example, I discussed the second episode of Master of None, a Netflix series starring Aziz Ansari, who is also the show's co-creator and co-writer. That episode focused on the relationship between Asians who came to this country in the 1960s and 70s and their American-born children. And as an American-born son of Indian immigrants myself, that episode really hit home with me. It told a story that I'd really never seen before on American television. Now, evidently, that episode impacted a lot of other people as well. Earlier this month, it won the Emmy for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series. Now, I'm sure that most of the Emmy voters weren't the children of Asian immigrants, which I think just goes to show that a compelling story has universal appeal. Now, given my support for greater diversity in the video marketplace, I'd hoped that I would be able to support this notice of proposed rulemaking. Indeed, it used to be the case that almost all FCC votes on notices were unanimous. Notices were meant to represent the beginning of the rulemaking process, not its end. Their purpose was to identify all pertinent issues and ask the right questions so that the Commission would be able to make a decision about whether to move forward with new rules, and if so, what those new rules should be, on the basis of a complete factual record. For this reason, commissioners were generally able to add questions to draft notices. Even if commissioners were ultimately likely to disagree on how substantive issues should be resolved, the norm within this building, when I heard during my years as a staffer in the Office of General Counsel, used to be that there's nothing wrong with asking a question. Unfortunately, those days are long gone. Too often, notices are now one-sided documents that leave little doubt that the Commission has already made up its mind on the issues about which it is purporting to seek the public's input. They suggest that the comment part of notice and comment rulemaking is merely an administrative hoop through which the Commission must jump, rather than a critical component in shaping the FCC's decision-making. Accordingly, questions that could generate answers suggesting flaws with the Commission's predetermined conclusions are excluded entirely from the document. Efforts to bring balance by just describing each side's arguments in a fair way are rejected out of hand. I was disappointed when the draft of this notice that I received 3 weeks ago reflected that approach. And so, as a result, I suggested a number of edits to make it less slanted, edits that would not have blocked the Commission's intended direction. I proposed a number of questions to ensure that all aspects of the issues raised in the document were explored. And it's especially critical to make one other point. Had my ideas been accepted, there still would have been adequate notice for adopting the final rules that this notice's most vocal proponents favor. But the vast majority of my edits and suggestions were rejected. In critical respects, this is effectively an order masquerading as a notice. This is a notice littered with statements indicating that the Commission has already decided many of the most important issues about which we are seeking comment. This is a notice that doesn't include many questions that could yield answers the Commission might find inconvenient. And this is a notice that I cannot support. In particular, I'd like to briefly discuss two of my most serious concerns. First, I'm not convinced that the FCC has the legal authority to adopt the proposals set forth in this notice, prohibiting unconditional most favored nation, or MFN, provisions, and unreasonable alternative distribution method, or ADM, provisions in program carriage agreements between MVPDs and independent video programming vendors. Now, the notice contends that Section 616A of the Communications Act gives the agency general rulemaking authority over programming contracts. In particular, the Commission points to that part of the provision that reads, "The Commission shall establish regulations governing the program carriage agreements and related practices between cable operators or other MVPDs and video programming vendors." Section 616A goes on to specify the things that those regulations should include, contain, or provide. 6 specific things. Now, the Commission claims that these regulations promulgated under Section 616A need not be limited to those 6 things and may include others, such as prohibiting unconditional MFN and certain types of ADM provisions. But I have my doubts. To begin with, in the almost quarter century since Section 616 was enacted, the Commission has never issued regulations under this provision that go beyond the 6 requirements specified in the provision. We've only implemented the specific terms set forth in Section 616A 1 through 6. Moreover, if Section 616A does give the Commission general rulemaking authority over programming agreements, well, then what are the limits on that authority? No one within the agency or without has yet answered this question. The notice's interpretation simply gives the Commission carte blanche to regulate programming contracts, and I see no evidence that Congress intended to give the FCC such limitless authority. I'm also concerned that such an interpretation of 616A1 could give rise to serious constitutional difficulties. Under the non-delegation doctrine, Congress must provide agencies with an intelligible principle upon which to base its regulations. But under the portion of Section 616A that the Commission believes it provides general rulemaking authorities, what is that intelligible principle? There is none. Additionally, the notice fails to ask about the significance, if any, of the contrast between the structure of 616A and that of Section 628C. In the latter section, Congress directed the FCC to establish regulations to prohibit cable operators and others from engaging in unfair methods of competition or unfair or deceptive acts or practices, the purpose or effect of which is to hinder significantly or to prevent any MVPD from providing satellite cable programming or satellite broadcast programming to consumers. And then in Section 628C2, Congress specified 4 different types of regulations that the Commission must adopt. And this provision, however, is entitled Minimum Contents of Regulations, thus signaling that Congress didn't intend for the FCC's rulemaking power under 628C1 to be cabined by the particular regulations discussed in Section 628C2. Consequently, Congress in Title VI of the Communications Act clearly knew how to indicate that particularly regulatory mandates established a floor for the Commission's authority, rather than a ceiling. Such an indication is found in Section 628C, but not within Section 616A. Moreover, Section 628C contains a clearly intelligible principle that can be used to guide a general grant of rulemaking authority. Section 616A, by contrast, doesn't appear to include any such principle. Now, shouldn't all these differences impact the Commission's interpretation of 616A? The second major concern is that I'm worried that the proposals set forth in this notice could have unintended consequences. Now, in my meetings with independent programmers, and there have been many of them, I've heard their concerns about how unconditional MFN provisions, as well as ADM provisions, are impacting their businesses. And I have sympathy for their perspective, particularly with respect to unconditional MFNs. But we need to consider fully the potential results of Commission action here. Remember that MVPDs are under no legal obligation to carry any particular independent programmers in the first place. So we have to consider whether banning unconditional MFNs and certain types of ADMs would make it less likely that independent programmers would be able to secure carriage by MVPDs at all. Would banning such contract terms make it more likely that those independent programmers already being carried by MVPDs would be dropped? Or would prohibiting such provisions make it more likely that a large MVPD would insist on exclusive deals with independent programmers, thus limiting these programmers' reach? In short, would the Commission's proposals make it easier or harder for independent programmers to gain distribution? Unfortunately, it's evident from the notice that the Commission has already fixed upon an answer before the record has even been compiled. One last point. I voted against the Charter Time Warner Cable Bright House merger because I was concerned that numerous conditions imposed upon that transaction would, over time, be transformed into industry-wide rules. And when I took that stand, I heard from many who insisted that this wouldn't be the case. Less than 5 months after that vote, here we are. The FCC is already proposing in this notice to impose on an industry-wide basis restrictions on programming agreements agreed to by the Justice Department and a single company during a single merger proceeding. Even before the use of the Time Warner Cable name has been completely phased out, we see the Commission's first effort to demand of the entire industry the regulatory tribute exacted from Charter. Mark my words, it won't be the last. I respectfully dissent.
Mr. O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's item takes up the cause of independent programmers who want all the benefits of cable distribution, including advertising revenues, while also seeking to prohibit certain distributor limits and acquire the ability to completely bypass their cable agreements to self-distribute. I understand why independent programmers would want this. It just doesn't seem to be the role of government to further it. In the end, I suspect the effort will not be as fruitful as anticipated, as independent programmers will face more difficulty getting underlying carriage, thereby reducing their viability and longevity. That means there'll be fewer diverse programming sources, not more. I do have some sympathy for independent programmers. They seek to fill niche consumer programming interests, often without diverse financial backing. In today's media marketplace, it's certainly difficult to generate such programming, survive a whirlwind of changing consumer tastes and technologies, and make overall finances work. At the same time, distributors often take a chance to carry such independent programming when it would be easier and perhaps more lucrative to carry other channels. In exchange, distributors seek certain conditions to justify their risks of carriage. With this item, the Commission seeks to improperly jump in the middle of programmer-distributor relationships and eliminate certain practices that the independent programmers have in the past and continue to voluntarily accept during private commercial negotiations. To argue that these are not free negotiations because it is an unbalanced negotiating table completely ignores the fact that such circumstances exist in so many other parts of our economy. For instance, if you want your product to be carried by Walmart, Marriott, or Home Depot, you have to deal with the potential for an unbalanced negotiating table. That's not illegal, inappropriate, or necessarily worthy of government involvement. Complicating this item is the simple fact that it is an extension of the conditions imposed on the merged Charter Communications in its acquisition of Time Warner and Bright House. Having been totally shut out of any involvement in the crafting of those conditions, I'm now being told that we must burden the entire industry with the same. At least Charter got something in return for acquiescing to such market interference. Some will argue that this item is merely an NPRM and just asking questions. But this commission, under this leadership, has proven this sentiment totally laughable. Just think about this very subject matter. We were told that the NOI was to be very vague and sit out there for quite a while before any action was even contemplated. And yet, here we are with a determined outcome and a march to completion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the issues here are really quite simple. We had a notice of inquiry. We had a series of workshops in this room. And those activities found discrimination against independent programmers. You've heard the term one-sided MFN, most favored nation, kicked around up here. Let's talk about what it means. It means give us the good stuff that you got in other deals, but we won't give you the terms that made such a transaction a fair deal. We've heard the term ADM, alternative distribution methods, restrictions thrown around up here. What's it mean? It means I'm a big cable system. If you want to get on, I must be able to dictate your use in other media. Now, the statute is pretty clear. The statute requires us, says shall. The statute requires us to prevent cable operators from engaging in conduct with the effect of unreasonably restraining unaffiliated video programmers. Is there anything reasonable in those two examples I just gave? So, this notice proposes to ban both of these discriminatory practices. It is an NPRM. It is an NPRM which, like all NPRMs, we say, here is the nugget of what we're talking about that we are proposing focus your attention on this. And we also specifically ask the question about our legal authority. I look forward to a fulsome input and to making a decision based on that record. And again, want to thank Commissioner Clyburn for keeping us focused on these issues. With that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. The item is adopted. The request for editorial privileges is granted with the objection noted. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting today, you will consider Item 5 listed under the consent agenda portion of the Commission's Sunshine Notice. For your convenience, we are providing you a copy of the notice.
I will shortly call for votes on these personnel actions. I guess we're having something.
Mr. Chairman,
where are we doing
we're
here?
doing the consent agenda. We have one consent agenda item.
Sorry.
Item number 5 that we're going to
All
consider right now.
Got it. We previously sought consent of all the commissioners for the inclusion of the items on the consent agenda. We've removed from the proposed consent agenda any item for which we received an objection from any commissioner or which was voted. For the remaining consent agenda item listed on the Sunshine Notice, we've received no objection from any commissioner. Accordingly, I'll shortly call for the vote on this consent agenda. If you're voting to adopt a consent agenda item, please indicate by voting in favor. If you oppose, please vote to oppose. With that, all those in favor of adopting the item listed on the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. Now, would you like to go talk about the other item? I was just, so anxious to move along here, Marlene.
Okay, now we will consider the personnel actions listed on the Commission's Sunshine Notice, and we will consider each one of them separately.
I will shortly call for votes, as I said before, on these personnel actions. Because they're personnel actions, there will be no discussion of the items. If you're voting to accept these personnel action items, please indicate so by voting in favor. If you oppose the adoption of these personnel actions, please vote to oppose. Madam Secretary, will you please announce each of the items?
Okay. For personnel action number 1.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered. Personnel action number 2. Well, that's you. That's not me.
Personnel action number 2.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. So ordered.
For personnel action number 3.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
No.
The ayes have it. So ordered.
Personnel action number 4.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. So ordered.
Personnel action number 5.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
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 The ayes have it. So ordered.
Personnel action number 6.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. So ordered.
It's completed.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Would any of my colleagues like to make any announcements at this point in time? Commissioner Clyburn?
Aye.
Aye?
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I was stuck. Yes. I would like to, if you will allow me to, introduce our three fall law clerks. Meg, if you would stand as I call you. Megan Sun is a 2L at Catholic University, Columbus School of Law, and the University of Miami School of Law. She is interned with us, as you might recognize her, in the Wireline Competition Bureau, and was named MMTC's Earl K. Moore Fellow last spring. Megan enjoys thrift shopping, and she started a digital media incubator in Fort Lauderdale called Fetachi for young men and women interested in fashion and blogging. And I don't know if some of you had time to watch a little television this morning when they talked to Sean Combs this morning. He's making more money. He made more money from his fashion line than music. So there's a bright future if you get a percentage of all of those people on that are subscribing to your service. I'm not promoting. I'm just stating a fact. Next, there is Adriana Odo, who's at 2L, also at Catholic University Columbus School of Law. She graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2015 and is originally from Youngstown, Ohio, Mr. Chair. She is a Pittsburgh Penguins fan and loves to bake in her free time. We will put her to work before the season is over.
Wait. We know, okay, the Penguins. Does she have any other sports teams that she follows?
You will take that up later after she bakes us something. And last but not least is Kelsey Rutherford, who's from Cincinnati, Ohio. She's got an invasion here. She's also a 2L, another invasion from Catholic University's Columbus School of Law. We know they rule the world here, right? But she graduated from the University of Tennessee in 2015, and she enjoys hiking, photography, and of course being a Tennessee volunteer fan. So here is my class, so to speak, of 2016 fall law clerks, and I would like to welcome them. They're doing a fine job.
That's great. You're very fortunate to have two Buckeyes on your team. Commissioner Rosenworcel, Commissioner Pye.
A few fall law clerks as well, starting with Julia Palermo. Julia, if you wouldn't mind standing up. She's a second-year law student at George Mason. She grew up in northern New Jersey. She's a proud Jersey girl and is not, despite rumors to the contrary, best friends with Snooki. Julia graduated from Marist College, where she majored in public relations with a minor in business. And at Marist, she started a program to teach karate to underprivileged kids. And so when she isn't talking trash in our fantasy football league, she's sparring with us to keep her 2 black belts in martial arts up to date. She's the first intern in Pi Office history to be on a first-name basis with Brendan Carr, due solely to her judgment that Step Brothers is the greatest movie of all time. Secondly, Alex McLeod is a third-year law student at American. She grew up in a small town just outside of the Bay Area and graduated from Sonoma State University, where she received a degree in economics with a minor in political science. While at Sonoma, she worked as an RA, volunteered at the local charter school for underprivileged youth, and I think this is the most important part, became a wine and cheese aficionado. As a Northern California sports fan, Alex says she's always watched the Golden State Warriors, even before they went 73-9. Yeah, right. The A's and the Raiders, much to my chagrin. She also claims she'll be taking my first place spot in the Fantasy Football League next week, but I have my doubts. Last but not least is Kirk Arner. He is a second-year law student at George Mason. He grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania and is still, surprisingly, a devoted Philadelphia Eagles and Phillies fan, at least for now. Prior to Mason, Kirk graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, majoring in philosophy, politics, and economics. While at Penn, he was a member of the Glee Club, no relation, I don't think, to the TV show. But although Kirk in many ways prefers Washington to Philadelphia, he still longs for the day when Wawa will still finally have the good sense to move southward. Thanks to all 3 of our great folks for their work thus far in the office, and we're excited for the semester to come.
Great. Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to mention a somber moment for me. And a friend of mine on Capitol Hill, Jim Lyons, an employee on the Senate Finance Committee, had a charity basketball event last week, had suffered a massive heart attack, and this afternoon they will be turning off his life support. So I wanted to extend my opportunity to thank Jim for getting to know him. And I wanted to mention that while we may fight on this dais and disagree on policy matters, We certainly know what's important, what's really important, our friends and our family, and thank you for your time.
Hear, hear. We too would like to welcome some new folks into the chairman's office. Stephen Klein. Stephen, are you back there? Where are you? Whoops. Okay. Stephen must be in class. He's a returnee. He was in the Enforcement Bureau this past summer. He's a third-year student at Georgetown University Law School, where he's the production editor for the Federal Communications Law Journal and a member of the Student Intellectual Property Law Association. And Stephen received a Bachelor of Science in Communications from the University of Miami. And Timothy Campbell. Tim, are you here? This is great. Everybody from the chairman's office decides not to show up.
They went to class. They're in class.
Hey.
Priorities.
Timothy's also a third-year student, attends American University, Washington College of Law, got a master's in American history, and both have been with us now for several weeks. I've already jumped in, and we are glad that they're both in class as well as working in the chairman's office. Are there any other things that should come before us at this point in time? Madam Secretary, tell us about our next date, please.
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, October 27th, 2016.
Thank you very much. Until then, we are adjourned. All right, here we are, Killer's Row.
Hi, everyone. We're going to start with the press conference now. Turn it over to Chairman Wheeler for a few words, then we'll get to your questions.
Thank you, Kim. Obviously, there was a great deal of interest in what the Commission did not have on the agenda today. And so I want to address that at the top here. It was simply a matter of running out of time. The set-top box item remains on circulation, remains in deliberation among the consumers. I trust that you've seen the joint statement that Commissioners Rosenworcel and Clyburn and I put out, and the commitment in that statement to unlock the box. So, let's talk about what we did today. Since it was established in 2012, the wireless emergency alert system has been a tremendous success that has literally saved lives, whether by giving advance notice to people to seek shelter before an oncoming tornado or transmitting Amber Alerts that led to the safe return of dozens of missing children. And while the system has worked, we know it can work better, as evidenced by the recent experience in New York City, where an alert identifying the alleged perpetrator had to say, go to the media to see his picture. This on a device where you're always looking at pictures. The updated rules would enable the public to receive additional vital information in wireless alerts. Public officials will now be able to send embedded links in all wireless emergency alert messages, including Amber Alerts, so the public can click to see a photo or to call authorities. It will enable local officials to send Spanish language alerts while seeking comment on whether we ought to be thinking about that in other languages as well. And participating wireless carriers will now be required to deliver alerts to more specific geographic areas. As I said in my statement, NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill couldn't have said it better. Lives are truly on the line. I agree, and that's why I'm gratified that the Commission has taken such swift action on this item. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Let's start at this end.
Sorry, Monty Taylor, Com Daily. Can you be more specific about why you ran out of time on the set-top item? Was there things that needed to be edited, or did you not have the votes to get it approved, or what?
We're going back and forth on edits and content.
A personnel question? No, set-top boxes, obviously. Kyle Daly, Bloomberg BNA. I'm just wondering, so it seems like from the record that's developing, the real sticking point is this licensing thing. Why not just drop that if the content industry and at least 3 other commissioners don't want it, and just get this thing done?
That's a great question, but I'm not going to negotiate with standing here.
Hi, Jenna Ebersole, Law 360. Did you believe you had a deal coming into this morning? Why the last minute change?
It is not unusual that commission items run up to the last minute. I can assure you that staffs had been working late nights, including last night. Commissioners were talking last night, and this is not an atypical situation. And so the point of the matter is, as I said, we ran out of time, so we keep it on circulation. Brian.
Hi, Brian Fung with the Washington Post. Are you still planning to do something on zero rating before the end of the year?
So, as I've said all along, we are carefully examining what has been developing in zero rating. It's interesting to see that new things continually come on. It's interesting to see that old things continue to evolve. And we're trying to make sure that we understand the dynamics of all of those.
You've been looking at this for a long time, though, now, right? Months. What are your thoughts after having?
I love it, Brian. Let's see. Sometimes I get beat up by the fact we've been taking too long. Other times I get beat up because we're moving too fast. Things move at the pace that is appropriate for that, and I think we're doing a good job with our examination of the ever-evolving issue of zero rating. David.
I am wondering, I'll give you a little bit more of a break from the set-top box thing. On wireless emergency alerts, you mentioned the incident in New York. That came up a lot. You were lobbied really heavily by the city of New York on it. But at the same time, after that incident, there were concerns that the way New York used this alert to put out the name of a suspect they were hunting for could lead to racial profiling, to sort of citizen vigilantism. So I'm wondering how you balance those concerns as you're working on this, and what you plan to do to make sure that doesn't happen.
We're the technology agency. We're not the agency that makes a decision as which alert gets sent.
David Hatch, Policy and Regulatory
Did the Davids always sit together? It seems like I'm always going
One of my
David.
favorites.
David.
We should flip back.
Yeah, exactly. Confuse things. Yes.
So, bipartisan lawmakers have written to the GAO requesting a report on CFIUS and proposing an expansion to CFIUS national security reviews. And one of the proposals that they want considered is whether the FCC chairman should be added as a permanent member to CFIUS. I'm wondering if you have an opinion on that. Would you support it? Would you oppose it?
We'll do whatever they tell us to do.
But do you have an opinion? Do you think that this agency should be?
This is something that Congress is the one that decides whether things are in or who is participating in this, and will abide by whatever Congress wants to decide. Okay. Lynn.
Thank you. Lynn Stanton, TR Daily. With regard to the zero rating, I don't even want to call it inquiry, I guess, study.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Did you going into it, and do you now have as an end goal some kind of action like NPR Unleashed Order, or is your intention now more of a just an informational kind of study?
So it's premature to speculate on something that might result from something that hasn't resulted. Okay, again, zero rating is something that there have been continual evolution in the old programs. There have been some new things. We're trying to make sure that we understand everything that's going on.
Hi, Alicia Green, CQ Roll Call.
Hi, Alicia.
Lawmakers have suggested that you should issue a new notice of proposed rulemaking for the set-top box item and open up comments again. Is that something that you would consider?
Oh, golly, this is something that has had public comment that has been going on for a couple of years. I mean, let's go back to the DSTAC report and all the comments filed in that, all the comments filed in this. I don't think that this is an issue where the public has not had an opportunity to express themselves or has not been heard.
Amir Nasser, Morning Consult. I wanted to ask about the ISP privacy rules that you recently said at the Senate hearing you were looking to finalize by the end of the year.
Yep.
I'm wondering, are you guys in talks right now at the FTC about potentially kind of streamlining those rules to go along with what they already have?
Well, as I think I said at the hearing, and although I didn't see the FTC subsequent hearing, I think they also addressed the issue that yes, they have made a formal filing with us, a filing that was bipartisan and unanimous, and we have been working with them, and I think I even in my comment at the Senate referenced how I had been in touch with them within the last 24 hours.
Brennan
Borderline. You're not Howard Simons. I know that for a fact, despite that name in front of you.
General Counsel? No. I was going to actually ask about the NPRM, but she took that from me. But I wanted to ask you about reports that there was a revised item that was put out by your office on Tuesday, and that part of the issue was that at least one commissioner's office was concerned that there wasn't enough time to review and comment on that revised item. Do you have anything?
We're talking about set-top boxes.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, this is a timing issue. Mm-hmm. This is do we have enough time for everybody to be able to do all the diligence they need to do and to be able to have the dialogues that are necessary? Mm-hmm. And again, I reiterate what I said at the outset, that it's clear from the statement of three of us that we intend to get something done.
Chairman Matt Danaman, Communications Daily.
Hey, Matt.
The Commission didn't do anything regarding MFNs with its totality of circumstances test evaluation back earlier this year. What's the different circumstances that make sense now to address MFNs through the NPRM this way as opposed to when you had an opportunity months ago?
So, I mean, I think the question becomes, let's see what develops in the record. We have proposed something, and that proposal was specifically targeted in order to elicit comments like this. And let's see what the record develops, and we'll make the decision based on that.
Margaret? Hi, Margaret McGill with Politico.
Hey, Margaret.
Hey, there have been a lot of calls for the Commission to release more information on the set-top box plan beyond what was in the fact sheet. With the time going forward, do you expect to release maybe a longer fact sheet with more details about what
We're in the look, all that's happened here is that the deliberative process that has been going on continues to go on. That's the only change. Cecilia?
Explain a little bit more about the timing, because on one hand you're saying this has been discussed for arguably 20 years, but more recently since January. What makes you believe that they can be passed this proposal that you put forward in that sense? How far are the differences?
Oh, I think that we all have a statement this morning that said we want to do something. All three of us want to do something. We're down to, making sure.
What makes you convinced that you can get this done?
Because we're dealing with people of good faith who have agreed they want to do something.
David.
Dave Sharps from Reuters.
Yes, sir, David.
You've got a lot on your agenda to get done. You've got obviously the set-top box, business data services, and the privacy rules.
Right.
So is this a setback to getting your entire agenda done on set-top boxes, or is this not a big setback?
This is just timing. This is tick-tock. This is clock. This is oops. We ran out of time.
And do you still think you'll get both business data services and the privacy rule done before the election?
Well, we're we're managing, what I've said all along is we're managing to get it done by the end of the year. I'd hope to have it done as soon as possible. John?
Do you think that there was any pressure from the Hill that made any difference in this outcome today on set-top box?
John, the Hill has made itself known on both sides of this issue since it started. And I agree with Cecilia, it was 20 years ago, but since the DSTAC and everything started a couple of years ago, it's ongoing.
Alex Byers from Politico, if I can just clarify.
Wait a minute, she already asked a question from Politic.
One and the same.
Are you going to put up with that when he says you're one and the same?
Well,
Mark,
if it gives him a second question, then he has to
Alex, yes, sir.
Two maybe obvious or just logistical questions.
Yeah.
You pulled the set-top box item because you did not have 3 votes for it, yes? And if so, when did you know that you did not have 3 votes for it?
What did you not hear about what I said?
I don't think it's been explicitly stated that the reason that it was pulled was because you didn't have votes for it. I just wanted to put that out there. We are in the process of a deliberative, trying to get to the end of deliberations on how to do it. And we ran out of time doing that. It is a large document. It goes back and forth. There were iterations that didn't come out until late last night. People need time. There's, period.
Do you see that a rule might actually be set before the end of the year?
Well, it's a notice and comment proceeding. There will be, a notice. There will be a comment period. Then there will be a reply comments period. Then there will be, how do we make sense out of all of that? I don't want to set an arbitrary date to it. Todd, sneaking up from the back row.
Yes, sir, with a small question.
There's never a small question from you.
When would you expect the item to be resolved?
I hope soon.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, everybody.
I got a follow-up.
Nice try, Monty.
The Bureau are coming up next.
All right, we will do the Bureau press conferences now. Questions for public safety, raise your hand. Okay, public safety, come on up.
Well, the rest of my team comes up here. Some of you may have noticed yesterday we had a test of the emergency alert system. Went out through the entire nation. Over 22,000 stations have already responded to us with results from that, and we're continuing to compile those results with our partners at FEMA and in industry, as well as the state emergency communication commissions. So really excited about the results of that national test.
I got a question about that test, if you're taking it.
I think we can, if the others don't mind. If we, yeah, sure.
Talking to some of the state EAS people yesterday, I know that some stations that would normally send out a Spanish language alert did not, because they got triggered through the broadcast daisy chain and through the iPause system. Do you know if any Spanish language alerts did go out yesterday?
They did. That's exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to test, because the way the emergency alert system is set up, it's set up to be fail-safe, right? If it doesn't get it through the internet, the connection that rides over the IP network, it will get it through the broadcast relay. Well, the Spanish part was through the broadcast relay, and so we believe this will give us the data necessary to refine the transmission of that second language version of the same alert. So that's where we're at with that. Yeah.
I got one more, unless anybody else goes.
do you think that this was a more successful test than the 2011 one?
It would be hard for me to compare because the work that was required to get that first one going, I know is very significant, and my good friend Admiral Jamie Barnett was in my position at the time, and so I would hesitate to say that one was better than the other. I can tell you that the foundation they set through the first test we built upon, and we think we were in a better place to capture results, not just from the broadcasters themselves, but from the disability rights organizations, as well as communities in general. So if we were better, it's only because that team prepared the table for us and we built upon that.
Thank you.
Greg, is that fair?
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Excuse me, regarding the WEA item today, could you clarify regarding the requirement for support for pictures and multimedia? Was that in the order or is that in the further notice? And is it both the pictures and the multimedia?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask James to clarify, because we wanted to bring in as much capability as we could when the technology and the platforms that the providers operate could support it. So we make allowable as soon as possible the inclusion of some, and I'll have James walk through the timeline, but then we walk through a timeline that transitions from it's allowable to you have to support it. So James, can you provide the details?
So with respect to multimedia, we identify in the order the public safety value that it would have to include that kind of content in alerts themselves. And in the further notice, we seek comment on technical parameters that should be associated with the transmission of multimedia in alerts, as well as on an appropriate compliance timeframe.
And the pictures piece. The pictures.
Right. So specifically, with respect to multimedia, the kind of content that we're contemplating including would be thumbnail-sized images and hazard symbols, informational symbols.
So that's multimedia sent over the data channel as an included part of the alert. We, after 30 days, now will allow the inclusion of a link to images, which we think will be very important. While it won't be that the alert pops up the picture on your screen as soon as you look at the alert, you'll, with one click, be able to get to the picture. And that we will make allowable 30 days after. 3 days after.
That's right. So with respect to embedded references, carriers will be permitted to include them in alerts 30 days from the rules publication in the Federal Register, and will be required to provide support for them 1 year from the rules publication in the Federal Register.
Did that answer the question?
I think so. I'm actually asking it for Paul, and he hasn't popped up in my email saying, you're an idiot, you asked the question wrong.
Paul's proxy. I love it. Yeah, thank you.
Did you have something on that issue?
Yeah, I just want to
go ahead.
Just to be clear, you said images and symbols, not video? This is in the further notice.
James answered the question first about multimedia. So video is a part of that multimedia piece for which we outline it's allowable, but we would defer to the future notice of proposed rulemaking on the details associated with videos.
Got it.
That said, there would be nothing that would preclude with the embedded links to have an alert originator host at that link a video clip of something.
Are there any restrictions on where you can link to?
We leave those details to work that we will do in implementation with the public safety community. Clearly, there's a number of considerations to make sure that we do that in a safe manner that has the right degree of confidence between alert originators, IPAWs, and the providers.
Thank you.
I would just clarify that the order does not allow video to be included in the alerts themselves.
Right. No. Yeah.
Question about geo-targeting. Nobody else wants to jump in here. Does the order require because during the presentation it was referring to allowing carriers to deploy the device-based geotargeting as soon as practicable. Does that mean just it's okay if you do, but you don't have to? And does the further notice, is it looking towards moving more towards that in the future?
Yeah, this is part of our thought process, is let's make it available as soon as practicable. And so within 30 days, we believe that with the rapid advancements that have been made in the ability for messaging in general to consult the location-based services within the phone, that it's becoming a very useful competitive feature between phones. We want to make clear that we would not just allow but appreciate and applaud that kind of effort, while ensuring there's a date certain for which alerted engineers can count on that capability being available for all the WEA participants. So, James, the schedule?
That's accurate, and I would just add that so in the further notice we seek comment on what a reasonable compliance time frame would be for a requirement that carriers match the target area specified by an alert originator rather than just best approximate it. And the dates that we seek comment on are 42 months from the rules publication in the Federal Register or 24 months from the date at which standards are completed, whichever is sooner.
So that's an important key point, because we won't require device-based alerting, but the requirement that we expect to define in the future notice to exactly match, we think would, while being tech neutral, that would drive the need for solutions like device-based alerting. Or it could be that by then we're so good at 911 location that they could meet it that way also.
I know you just said that it'll be technology neutral, but does the item contemplate any specific type of technology for the improved geotargeting?
This item does not, and we have been working for some time now on improved geolocation associated with 911, and in that proceeding and the engagements since the R&O for that proceeding with the industry, we see the emergence of some wonderful new technologies that will make geolocation of devices at scale across providers much more achievable, and we think that will have a complementary effect, useful effect for this item.
Thank you. Questions on foreign ownership? Anybody? Nope. Okay, then we'll do the Media Bureau for Video Programming Diversity. Any questions? Got one here? Great.
Hi. Questions about the programming item?
Sure. Does the item define what an independent programmer is? Is that anybody not connected to an MVPD or just any large programming entity, or how do you describe that?
Yes, it's a notice, so it proposes a definition of an independent programmer.
Can you share what the definition is?
Essentially, it's someone who's not linked with a major studio. I don't know exactly what the wording is, but it's not only independent from an MVPD, for example, but also independent from the major studios.
Got it. And is there also consideration of some kind of rule that would require pay TV companies to have a certain percentage of the content they carry be independent programmers, or was that left out?
No, that's not proposed.
Okay.
Can you give a little bit better sense of what kind of questions are asked about bundling?
Well, we ask very broad questions in the NOI, and what we've identified are two sets of issues with respect to contract provisions on which we've made specific proposals. One is unconditional MFNs, which I think the chairman described, and the other is unreasonable ADMs. And what we've said is that we don't propose to forbid any clauses that relate to putting programming on alternative distribution methods, but we want help in defining those that are unreasonable, because we did find in the record that independent programmers say that these ADMs are often a great obstacle for them in getting their initial carriage and also in being able to get additional carriage over the top.
I guess I was under the impression that along with those that the NPRM also asks sort of questions about bundling.
Yes, we don't have a specific proposal on bundling, but we got a lot of record input on bundling and the possible effects on independent programmers, and we've asked additional questions on that.
Okay, but yeah, like what sorts of questions, additional questions are being asked?
Essentially, what effect there may be of bundling practices in eliminating the opportunity for independent programmers to get carriage. Some of the suggestions we've had are that there may be capacity limitations by the MVPDs, so if they're required to carry large bundles, they may not have the room for independent programmers. There have been some suggestions that it may be a financial matter, that if they're carrying channels that they might not otherwise carry because of bundling restrictions, that might not leave the money to be able to carry additional programmers. That's the kinds of questions that have been raised in the record and that we pose further in the notice.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Just a brief statement from me, and I don't know if Commissioner Riley. With respect to the set-top box proposal, to me, the proposal doesn't need more time behind closed doors. It needs a public's input for both legal and policy reasons. And that input can only happen if the Commission considers its proposal in the context of a further notice. And that's why I believe the majority should release the red line that was circulated at 9 p.m. last night. We need to let the public know exactly what the FCC's proposal is and provide informed views on it. So let's unlock the plan. And with that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Let's start with Monty. Can you tell us anything about what was in that version?
Yes.
Please do.
No.
Okay. Did it contain a licensing body of any kind? Still not going to do it?
Unfortunately, I can't, but I think this just illustrates the importance of an open and transparent process. This vaunted deliberative process that we heard about in Capitol Hill a couple of weeks ago can only be such if the American people have a chance to have a seat at the table.
Well, can you tell me when you found out it was going to be pulled, and how you were going to vote on it before it got pulled?
I found out about it at 10 a.m. This morning.
Wow.
And, yeah, around 10 a.m.
Couldn't help but notice that the joint statement didn't include you guys from Chairman Wheeler and the two Democratic commissioners. Should we read anything into that, or are you not prepared to support the item if you can get it to a place?
To be able to support it means you actually are having any kind of conversations on the item, notwithstanding the pledges of bipartisan deliberative discussions that would occur. We've had none. And so if there was, conversation the chairman alluded to late last night, I had zero. We actually were told by the chairman's team that when we made edits, suggested edits to the last document, not to this document, but to the previous document we made and had talked about previously, like things that we wanted to see happen. We made specific requests, and we were told that unless they were included in the other two Democratic commissioner lists, they would not be included in any form, and there was no conversation about that. They were immediately ignored. So I don't know how that's deliberative, and I don't know how that is even inclusive of any of our thoughts. So unless they propose them, and we just happen to agree with their thoughts in our list, that they happen to overlap, then none of our thoughts mattered. So I'm having a tough time figuring, and at the same time, some people are, have argued that I'm the problem with bipartisanship at the commission. So it's a very interesting dynamic we have.
Hi, Jenna Ebersole, Law 360. Do you think there's any chance this doesn't get done this year? Are you pleased to see a delay?
Well, I'm pleased because I don't think the document itself is ready, and I've suggested a number of changes to it. I'm never pleased that or I always say, we want the document to be in the best form it should be in, and whenever it's ready. I have no clue in terms of the timing, and have not been part of any discussions this morning. I learned the same time Commissioner Pai, they called us just before the meeting to say that it was going to get pulled. So that's how it went.
And to me, the lesson of this particular episode is that bad process yields bad outcomes. If the Commission had adopted an open, transparent, and bipartisan process from the get-go, I have to think that what you saw transpire today and last night likely wouldn't have occurred or could have been mitigated. But unfortunately, as Commissioner O'Reilly pointed out, we've been entirely excluded from the process, notwithstanding the fact that several days before any other offices did, we put our proposals on our internal email chain and said, look, here's a way forward, we think. We would like to get your input. And this is all too typical. Our suggestions were just dismissed out of hand.
Can you be a little bit more specific about when you offered up your proposals for the item?
Speaking for ourselves, it was, it was over the weekend. It was not this week. I think it was Sunday, or maybe Saturday.
So I've got two quick questions. The first is, can you speak at all to what your way forward was if it wasn't adopted by the leadership? And then the second one is for Commissioner O'Reilly. You alluded to this, but you were essentially accused of, as you said, being a source of partisan strife by Senate Democrats. And I'm wondering if you regret the comments that were brought up at that hearing as evidence that you have perhaps been contributing to an overly partisan atmosphere, and second, if you've had any conversations with Senator Nelson or anyone else since then about those concerns. The first question was what was your way forward on this item?
I can't get into the details, but what I can say is that it would have been consistent, I think, with our legal authority and would have reflected largely where I think the marketplace is evolving. And if you look at some of the previous statements I've made, what I suggested would not be a surprise to you.
I say fundamentally, it is to get the Commission out of and be the placement between programmers and distributors. In multiple layers and multiple parts of the item. We still, this licensing entity, the Commission still has its tentacles in that, and I don't believe it should. So I'd like to, those are two areas that I've already identified as part of my testimony in the Senate Commerce Committee. There are more specifics. There are a bunch of different other things that have come forward that are lesser known, but still need to be addressed, in my opinion. We'll just have to see if there's any willingness. Turning to your second question, I'm happy to address. I didn't find my comments intended to incite partisanship, and I said to Senator Nelson that I wasn't trying to antagonize or inflame. I was just speaking what I think were accurate. It's been, it's interesting process we have here that we're not included, and yet somehow that I shouldn't be upset about that in some form. But, I have not talked to the senator since the hearing, but I think my proof is that I work on all the items, and was happy to work on this item if included. So I'm one of the sources of, we had a good dialogue on foreign ownership. I've been pushing hard on that and trying to get us to move forward. A Team Telecom, there's a ton of things that I've tried to find a bipartisan agreement on. So I think that's my legacy and history here at the Commission so far.
Do you feel like not to hammer too hard on this point, but that the language you used at the time, forgetting for a second the substance of your concerns, that the language you used about suggesting that Democrats couldn't be trusted, whether that's on the Hill or here, do you think that in retrospect was the right language to use?
Well, I was repeating the phrase that was used on Capitol Hill. It wasn't my phrase or my. It's a long it's been used for decades. So I just restate in that. That was that wasn't my phrase. I was just repeating, and it went to the heart of the fact that in multiple items, since my time has been here, my colleagues have backed away from deals either the morning of or right up, delayed meetings. So it is problematic when part of, as I said to the senator, part of my commitment to the committee and to him was that I would be able to keep my word. And that you could trust what I said, and I think I've honored that. Other times, I don't know that everyone else has done that.
Commissioner O'Reilly, you've emphasized today that the team telecom review needs to be completed. I recognize that you're in the minority, but do you have any sense as to the status of that review, and do you think that a final vote could take place this year?
I would certainly be hopeful that can occur. I think the record is complete on that item, and we can move forward. I don't have an idea of the timing for that or any of the other items potentially.
Is there any sense as to whether parties are stalled or gridlocked over some of the proposed changes?
I don't get that impression. I think there's quite a good deal of agreement on the item. There was certainly some views from the administration I thought were not reflective of the current situation and maybe a little unnecessary and protective. So I think that there's a way to get to home, in my opinion, in the coming months. I just don't control the agenda.
Thanks, and Stanton Tier Daily. Regarding the Global Star order, can you give us an update on your status and when you think you'll make a final decision?
Sure. I don't have any new data or information to provide on the situation. You can see from my ex partes I continue to have conversations with anyone who's interested in coming in, and I don't have any idea on the timing. I don't know that it's any different than last month.
And also, the two of you voted no on all of the personnel items. Can you give it, which we don't know what they were, and nobody seems to want to tell us. Can you give us any insight at all as to what there would be about a personnel item that would cause you to vote no?
I'm not sure we can.
Well, we can't get into the merits of any particular item, but what I will say is that the chairman unilaterally and without consultation changed the process, and that at least I think informed our decisions, or at least my decision. I don't want to speak for Commissioner O'Reilly.
Yeah, I guess I can agree. I raised this as part of my Senate Commerce Committee hearing testimony that's available. That you can see that he submitted, here's a unilateral decision. We are changing the process, and here's how it's going to be resolved. Never, But I asked, can we do the same thing for any of the process reform items that you agree with? There's, he's testified in front of the House Commerce Committee that he agrees with a number of the changes that I proposed. So there's a great deal of agreement in that universe. Why, if you can unilaterally do one, why can't you do some of the others? And that seemed to have fallen on deaf ears.
Or conversely, be a traditionalist across the board. So.
For those of us who aren't FCC negotiating experts, can you explain what a 9 p.m. red line means? Is a red line a proposal from the chairman's office, suggestions from another commissioner, or what is that document that you have there?
So typically what will happen is that the Bureau staff in charge of drafting a particular item will send around to the 5 commissioners' offices a red line. So you have the black letter document that was originally circulated, and then here are all the changes we've made that are quite literally in red in Microsoft Word. So, yeah.
And then after the red line was circulated to this magical email chain that you guys have, were any other changes suggested by any commissioner offices?
I'm trying to think of the timing. Not that I remember. Well, this was circulated around 9 p.m. I'm trying to remember when some of the other changes were sent around. I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if I could just follow.
Yeah.
I'm following up on it.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, can you go
in there?
in unison?
Just for clarity. So for it to be a red line, that means that somebody's proposed it and the chairman is allowed, or the chairman's office is allowed it to be in the red line. So what happens is you all propose edits and they never show up in red. Does that?
Well, to be clear, our edits never show up anyway, but in the theoretical case, what will happen is a particular commissioner's office will say, we suggest changes A, B, and C. If changes A and B have 3 votes but C does not, then traditionally what will happen is the chairman's office will direct the Bureau, incorporate changes A and B into the item. Then the item, when circulated, either within the document itself, it will say, you'll show the red line changes, and there will be a comment bubbles, included at the suggestion of Commissioner X's office, or within the text of the email in which the red line is sent, they'll say, these changes reflect suggestions made by Commissioner X.
But they haven't gotten a certain number of votes yet. It's just being accepted to be put out there for then other commissioners to say, yes, I like it or I don't like it?
Yes and no. Typically, it will be the case that those edits are incorporated only if there are 3 votes. But I have seen some cases in which it's been news to me that there are 3 votes for something, but nonetheless it magically appears in the item.
The formality of getting 3 votes on it, though, is what putting it in a red line. Is that
not necessarily, no. In addition, there was one particular change that I'm not at liberty to discuss to this red line that was not made at the suggestion of any particular commissioner. Or at least no commissioner suggested it on our internal email chain. I'm not aware of anybody asking for it, and so we're very curious about how it ended up there.
I'd only provide a little bit more color and say that sometimes commissioners will have an idea or a concept, and the red line is intended to reflect those into actual wording, so you get to see how it would actually function and read it in context of the other paragraphs, so it provides more context. You had a follow-up on that?
Okay, just real quick. Was the 9 p.m. red line the first new version of the item that you had seen since they announced that they were circulating it to everyone when they put out the fact sheet and everything?
There was a circulated version. Then there was, I think, was there another one? I'm trying to think. When was that? Do you remember? I can't remember when that was circulated. And then there was a 9 p.m. one. So there was one in the interim between 3 weeks ago and last night.
Okay.
What was it?
I can't remember. I remember reading it. I just can't remember when it was. Yeah. It's all kind of a blur.
You know, I must admit, I went to bed I was in bed by 9 o'clock last night. This baby thing is just killing me, so I'm a little lost in some of the days there and exactly when it did come out.
Was it a week ago, or was it at 3 p.m. last night? Or 3 yesterday, you know what I mean? Was it?
It was a few days ago.
Okay.
Brendan Bordelon with Morning Consult. This is for Commissioner O'Reilly. You said a few questions ago that the FCC still had its tentacles in between programmers and providers on the Copyright Licensing Board. To clarify, did you mean that in that red line that was sent out last night, there was still some sort of FCC oversight?
So I clarify, I didn't get a chance to read the 9 p.m. document. I was already in bed, so I haven't. But my understanding is it hadn't changed from the previous version, at least that piece, too much, and so I believe that they still have a role in that equation. It is different than previous versions, but it's still involved, in my opinion.
And that includes the one that was just referenced a few days, a week ago or whatever, that was still in there as of a week ago.
That's my understanding, that it's still, like I said, I haven't read that document. I was doing statements this morning, but my understanding is it hadn't changed. And so the last version I saw still had a role for the commission. You know, it's arguably that it would, some would say it's a backstop, but I would argue it's still got its tentacles involved.
Matt Danneman, Communications Daily. Both of you had sort of raised the specter of Charter Time Warner mission creep, of the conditions on that spreading into general regulation. Are there particular conditions or terms of the charter conditions that you see as more likely that this FCC would try to implement? What are the ones that seem most dangerous from your standpoint?
Well, I think if you look at my dissent, it was just all of them. I mean, most of the conditions, for example, usage-based pricing is one of the ones that I pointed out in my dissent. It was pretty clear that the agency was foisting that upon the parties to the transaction, not because it was merger-specific, but because it sort of forecast a policy direction that they would like to impose upon the entire industry. And I think that is a good example of one that I think a particular majority would like to impose sooner or later.
I agree. I think the difficult thing about the conditions is we had no involvement in them until they were sent around, and so we weren't part of the formation of them. At least we weren't part of the formation of them in any form or fashion, and now they're being wholesale implemented into other items. I think that's extremely problematic, and it doesn't reflect what the record was, because the record reflects what as it relates to that particular merger and what people commented about it, not the industry as a whole or all of the players that may be involved in it.
And just from an administrative process, just remember how important this is. I mean, this is a merger proceeding where the American public doesn't get to have a say. You don't have a notice and comment period as you would in a general rulemaking. And so essentially, you have the Department of Justice saying to these parties, okay, we want you to agree to these conditions. The FCC then says, okay, these are great conditions. We'll approve the deal too. And then, without any sort of public input, the agency will say, and you sometimes have heard from up on this dais, well, look, we agreed to it in the charter transaction. Let's just apply it to everybody. It's only fair. I mean, we did it to these particular companies. We should do it for everybody. And that's exactly how the administrative process should not work. If it's a good idea for the industry, then tee up in a full and fair way in a notice of proposed rulemaking, we propose to do the following things, and then let the American public comment, and then make a decision. Don't sort of shoehorn into this regulatory framework every other company which never had a say in the original proceeding.
What I would add to that, and I referenced it in my statement, Charter agreed to those circumstances. They were party to that. The rest of the industry wasn't party to that item. So, they got something for it. You can say it was good or bad or whatever. They made an agreement with those conditions and accepted them. Nobody else has.
You say you portray this as sort of being foisted without any input from the American people. I mean, it's an NPRM process, and it was an NOI process. So there's public input right there, though, isn't there?
Well, not in the sense that, I mean, the entire foundation for this was the charter merger. I mean, you heard from the dais today that, look, in the charter merger, we were forward-thinking, we imposed this condition. And that's part of the reason why I dissented from the original charter order itself.
I think I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We can call it NOI, we can call it NPRM. It's just a prelude to the report and order. These are formalities. It's just a matter of months before we see the final outcome. We already know. Tentative conclusion means that's what the item's going to say. We rarely have. There are definitely exceptions, and I think Lynn pointed them out one time to me. There are definitely exceptions to that general rule, but the general rule applies. That what you see is pretty much what we're going to get. It's just a matter of when they're going to pull the trigger on that.
I wanted to ask, if you have this 9 p.m. red line but with no new suggestions from commissioners, why wouldn't there be 3 votes today?
That's a very good question for members of the majority.
I was not party to any conversations last night or this morning regarding any of that, so I don't have any insight for you.
Earlier to an item or a provision in the 9 p.m. red line that had never showed up before and that for which you had no kind of chain of custody or whatever. What did it provide for?
Unfortunately, given my understanding about the rule regarding the disclosure of non-public information, I can't get into what it was. Quite.
And its effect? What would its effect have been?
Its effect would have been to grant almost a singular exception to a particular company. That's all I'll say.
Anyone else? I'm here. Commissioner Pye. Just wondering if you have any updates on your Lifeline investigation that you've been kind of ongoing.
Yeah, so we've sent out a number of letters, as you know, to USAC, to state commissions and others. We've been in the process of receiving responses. A number of the state commissions, for example, recently submitted responses. And so we are taking a look at that information, trying to synthesize it, and to figure out what the next steps are. And so we're in ongoing conversations with all of them, including folks within the building. We've reached out to the Enforcement Bureau and to the Office of Inspector General to see if there are any lessons that they draw from the data we've compiled so far. And if so, how can we sort of implement some sort of FCC best practices or other actions to make sure that there's wise stewardship of the fund.
Exception for a particular company that you were referring to, do you think that had some effect on the sort of delay that occurred today?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I read the red line that came out last night, and we went to bed, woke up this morning, we were working on our statement, and then just found out at 10 a.m. This was going to be yanked from consideration. So I had no insight whatsoever into what was going on behind closed doors.
Trying to dance
around this even more, but so this singular exception, can you at least tell us, does it involve, like, what side of the ecosystem are we talking about? Like the third parties, the MVPDs?
I can't get into it anymore. That's if the commission agrees to release the document, as I think they should, then you'll get all the insight into that that you deserve.
Do you think they will?
No.
I would say that the pressure is building, both in Congress and within the community, to make the documents available, so we can all have a conversation on what the specific text is. Maybe it's not immediate, but I think it's increasing. We saw a letter this week from a number of Democrats on the Hill who sought that the document be made available. So I think you're seeing an increase in the number of people, whether it's on one-offs or collectively, that we should make the documents available. I don't know that it's immediate, but I think it's growing.
Anyone else? Thanks a lot.
All right.